Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise be to Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. O Allah, grant us knowledge, wisdom and sincerity. Dear listeners, I salute you all with the salutation of the people of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host Hatim Al-Absalam. Please join me in welcoming my distinguished guest, Sheikh Kahlan bin Nabhan Al-Kharusi, the Assistant Grand Mufti of the Sultanate of Oman. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Brother Hatim. And I would like to welcome all our audience as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Sheikh, for being with us again on the show. We have another list of questions, and we hope, inshallah, time permits to address all the questions.
We pray to Allah the Almighty to enrich our knowledge in His religion and to guide us all to the right path and allow us to serve His religion and meet the concerns of our audience.
Thank you, Sheikh. The first question says, I work in an ambulance and many times my duty requires me to be alone in an ambulance with a male driver. Is this permissible?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise be to Allah. Peace and blessings be upon His last messenger. She must avoid such situations, and this means that all the preparations required to avoid falling in being alone with a stranger, even in such necessities, but because we know that they are working for long times, and this by itself is not allowed in Islam for women to be alone with men. And that means that there must be regulations from the institutions to which they belong to avoid such situations, because this prohibition is not only upon the shoulders of women, but even men are asked also the same. They are prevented, Islamically talking, from being alone with strangers of women. And of course we all know that there are female nurses and male nurses as well. So if it is the case that they cannot avoid, except that each ambulance does contain female nurses, so in this case there should be more than one, at least 2 or 3 female nurses with the driver, but not a female nurse with a male nurse or a male driver. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, why did Almighty Allah equip Satan with powerful tools and powers that might lead believers astray?
The answer is that yes, it is true that Allah the Almighty has equipped Satan or devil with all the requirements that might lead people astray, but at the same time He has warned, Allah the Almighty has warned His servants against Satan, and He has informed them of his ways to lead people astray. And here we need to remember that there are 2 things individuals need to know. The first thing is the importance of knowledge. The second thing is the importance of actions, good actions and good deeds. And this is when Allah the Almighty tests people, and He is going to in the hereafter to reward or account people in accordance to both their actions based upon their knowledge, because we all know that this is a balanced religion, and for people to be rewarded, definitely there are going to be obstacles and challenges, so that if they are able to succeed and to overcome these challenges and difficulties, then here the test is meaningful. Otherwise, if there are no obstacles, no desires to resist, no temptations to avoid, then the test itself, the concept of test itself, is meaningless. Everybody is going to be exactly the same as others. They are not facing any difficulties, and that's why they wouldn't be able to vary in their righteousness before Allah the Almighty. And when I say that Allah the Almighty has equipped Satan, at the same time He has equipped people, mankind, the ability to resist the whisper of Satan, the temptation raised by devil. So every human being is capable of resisting the temptation raised by Satan, and they are capable also of obeying Allah the Almighty and submitting to His will. And this equipment of human being, of mankind, is based, as I said, upon knowledge. So they are asked to learn and to know what pleases Allah the Almighty and what displeases Allah the Almighty, how to fight against Satan, and how to be conscious and how to stand firm upon the straight path. Because Allah has cursed those who are not, although they do have knowledge, but they do not act in accordance to their knowledge. And that's why comes the importance of the ability to be righteous, the ability to be conscious of Allah the Almighty, and maintaining the straight path, and doing good in this life, and determining to act in righteousness. And this is the second condition, as I said, which is the good acts, the good deeds that individuals are asked to perform during this life. And when they are functioning in accordance to this concept, then they are going to enjoy the meanings of worshipping Allah the Almighty and resisting all the temptations and desires that might lead them astray. And this is how we should understand the concept of worship and the concept of fearing Allah the Almighty. And it's not only Satan that is equipped by things that might lead individuals astray, but even from our own souls, from within, there is a whisper, there is a temptation, there is a great natural desires that every human being is experiencing to fulfill. Yet Allah the Almighty has equipped our souls with the ability to resist all these temptations and to hold on to the straight path. Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Allah in this verse says, by the soul, that which shaped it, and that which shaped it and inspired it to leadness and God-fearing, prosperous is he who purifies it, and failed has he who seduced it. So we all know that the human soul has the ability either to follow the path of Satan or to follow the path of Allah the Almighty, and this gives life its meaning and gives the life to come its meaning as well. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question is from a brother. He says, one of my cousins was blessed with a baby girl and decided to name her Sable, which is spelled S-I-B-E-L. Is this permissible in Islam? And while addressing this question, Sheikh, maybe you can clarify the concept. Is there such a thing as an Islamic name or a non-Islamic name?
This is a matter of culture rather than of religion. Yes, we can understand from different prophetic traditions and from the actions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we should give good names to our children. To the extent that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself, he used to change the names that give bad meanings or negative meanings or bear meanings that are not accepted within the norms of and standards of the society. He changed many names of males and females of his companions. So we can understand from this set of evidence that it is highly recommended to choose good names. The only ruling about this is that we are not allowed to give names that are contradicting our faith. Like the name of Abdul Masih as an example. Because every human being is a servant to Allah alone and not to anybody else. Or any name, or to name a person after a statue as an example. To ascribe a person to a statue or to a famous idol, this is forbidden in Islam. Otherwise all names are accepted. But then it is a matter of culture, as I said, because names are taken out of the womb of the culture of the society. So if we are talking about an Omani culture as an example, so the names given to children should be Arabic names taken from our own language, representing good meanings. Of course, I mean, there is a tendency towards giving names taken from the people whom we love, particularly Prophet Muhammad as an example. His names, Muhammad, Ahmad, the names of the companions whom we admire, historical people that we all agree that they played a great role and we do appreciate, so that their remembrance, their names are going to be remembered. And it's also a sort of a wish or a hope that those children carrying such names are going to follow the steps of the previous people who we appreciate and admire. But this is not a must. What we should what we should recognize here is that it is part of our culture, and that's why we should adhere to our own culture as part of preserving our own identity. And at the same time, because this is the name by which the person is going to be recognized and called by his fellow members in the society, then of course it should be within the usual names in the society, taken from, as I said, Arabic names, or its roots should be taken from Arabic roots. When I search for the origins of this word, Sibyl, I couldn't find that it has any root in Arabic language, even, I mean, modern Arabic, let alone if we are talking about classical Arabic. So it has no existence at all with any of its forms and derivatives. So it is a non-Arabic word, and that's why we should avoid naming, because I mean, I would assume that the questioner is an Omani father or parent. That's why we wouldn't recommend him to call his boy or girl, is it a name? A girl name with such a name. There are variety. Arabic language is one of the richest languages in its terminology, and there are names carrying very good meanings. If the parents are to choose a name that is special or unique, then again there are a lot of names found in Arabic. They are meaningful, they give good names, good meanings, they sound good as at the same time. So this is the concept, this is the underlying attitude towards names in our culture. But if we are talking about names given in other societies, then this name does not contradict any Islamic concept. So in general, yes, it is a name that can be given to a Muslim female girl, a Muslim girl, but not in a society which language is Arabic. All people are going to be either literate or illiterate. Her fellow mates are going to call her with the name that is known, and at the same time its meaning and its rhythm is used to be used within the culture of the society.
نستغفر الله ونتوب إليك 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 نستغفر الله ونتوب إليك.
If you have any questions for the show, send your email at k.r@oman-radio.gov.om at k.r@oman-radio.gov.om knowing your religion, or send SMS to 90406. Don't forget to indicate k.r before sending your questions. And for your comments and suggestions, check out our Facebook, Knowing Your Religion.
Sheikh, by mentioning this topic, I came across a family and where the father has named his son a very strange name, and this name is not common in the society, and it caused embarrassment for the child. And when the boy started to go to school, he was bullied because of his name, and he started hiding his identity so that nobody would know his real name.
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean,
the parents don't take into consideration the effect, the psychological effect that names have on children when we give them.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is one of the elements that we should consider when we are giving names, to avoid any embarrassment for the person at any level, at the school or in the society, or when he is in the country or outside, and to avoid any embarrassment for his larger family. It's not only his own family, his parents, but his larger family. And as I said, it's everywhere, that it is part of the culture itself. It should reflect the values, the norms, the attitude of the culture of that particular society. But again, I mean, to be very specific, this might sound odd in our own society, and I can also assure our audience that in all in the Arab world, the Arabic-speaking societies, it is going to sound odd, and it is going to cause a lot of embarrassment, but not probably in a foreign country where their own language also, they do have such names and they are commonly used. But that's the question. I mean, for a boy who belongs to a family with a particular culture, then the components of that culture must be preserved, and the identity of the culture must be again preserved. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. Now the next question says, a person performed Umrah and changed their ihram attire before shaving off their heads. What do they have to do in this case?
Well, first of all, they are asked to repent to Allah the Almighty, ask for forgiveness, because what they have done is, of course, wrong. It's against the order of the performance of Ihram. And here they are asked by the majority of scholars to pay off the ransom. The ransom here, not necessarily an animal, to slaughter an animal and to be distributed there in Mecca. It can be to feed poor people, 6 persons, or to clothe them, or to fast 3 days. So it is to feed, it is to feed 6 poor persons in Mecca, in the city of Mecca, or to fast 3 days, or to slaughter an animal. And the animal must be distributed for the poor and needy in the society of Mecca. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Sheikh, just to clarify this, does he have a choice to?
Yes, in this case, yes.
One of the 3.
Yeah, he can choose one of these alternatives. Yes.
So it's either feeding 6
poor or needy individuals in the society of Mecca, or fasting 3 days, or slaughtering an animal.
Oh, slaughtering an animal.
Yes.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, is it permissible to trim or cut short my daughter's hair, knowing that she has not reached the age of puberty?
If we are talking about the opinions of jurists, of Muslim scholars and fuqaha, then this is a disputed issue, but it is a marginal argument between Muslim scholars, and the most of the scholars, they do allow it, particularly if there is a good cause for it. If there is a good cause to trim or cut short the hair of girls before puberty, then yes, it is allowed. Otherwise, if it is just to beautify, then we should avoid this. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Because actually, if I may add something, that the question of women, adults, cutting or trimming their hair is another disputed argument. But the argument is stronger with adults than it is with girls. And we may talk about this later, inshallah ta'ala, in any occasion, if we are asked.
Inshallah. Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, while performing prayers, gas comes out of my mouth. Should I say anything or just continue praying?
No, continue praying. He or she is not asked to do anything. And this, of course, does not invalidate one's wudu, one's ablution. Neither it does violate the prayer. So we should just continue on the prayer. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, I am a nurse in a public hospital, and part of my task is to look after male patients, which requires sometimes to bathe them or to clean their private parts in severe cases. Is this permissible?
When we are talking about severe cases, then this means that we are talking about necessity. But the description that she told us about seems to be a normal situation. I mean, a patient admitted to a hospital, and because she is a nurse, she is asked to bathe him and to expose his private parts. This is not allowed. This is not the necessity that we are talking about, or jurists and fuqaha are talking about. And here I may highlight this particular point. When we find in the discussions of jurists, Islamic scholars, in the fiqh material, that they are talking about necessities, they are talking about situations in which the life of individuals is endangered. And here comes the permissibilities associating these necessities. So if it is, yes, to rescue other people's life, then here we can break some of the rulings that are well set up in Islam. And I mean here in particular in the what is relevant to the question, a female is handling or treating or exposing the private parts of a stranger male. In this case, yes, if it is to rescue the individual's life, then she is allowed, and the opposite is also allowed, providing that the same gender individuals are not available. But if they are available, then in this case they are asked to rescue that individual. Otherwise, if we are talking about patients, normal patients, yes, they are in severe conditions, but they are stable. Now to do nursing, for them this should be done for males by maids, and for female patients by female nurses. And I do urge the authorities responsible for such regulations to observe these Islamic rulings. And I have talked to many of the authorities about this particular point, because we do have male nurses and female nurses. So let the male nurses treat and nurse male patients, and exactly the same for female nurses, to treat and nurse female patients. Whenever there is a life matter, then this is a different issue. The permissibility is there. This is the necessity that we are talking about. This is the case that the Muslim scholars are talking about.
Sheikh, there is always an excuse of a shortage of male nurses, and that this is part of the tasks of the female nurse, as they are the majority. What can we respond to this?
Well, this has been the excuse for years now.
Yeah.
They could have settled this throughout the training programs, the courses, the academic preparation required for both, for male and female. But because there isn't the intention, and the tendency accordingly is not to give this particular ruling the attention required, the situation has not changed. Once we do have the good intention and the determination, then it can be treated easily, because still, I mean, these institutions, the nursing institutions, still they do receive hundreds of graduates, hundreds of applicants, so they can, right from the beginning, they can make their plans and programs, I mean authorities, so that they would accommodate and they would accept in parallel lines with their real requirements of both males and females. Because at the same time, I mean, we do receive a lot of questions, tens of questions from nurses, both males and females. They do not want to fall into violating this ruling. And that's why they choose departments where they can avoid being in such situations. So this means that there is a loss also of equipped and qualified and skilled individuals, but because they cannot work in a healthy environment as far as their religion is concerned, they choose departments that are not relevant to their own professionality, or that is not, I mean, because these departments wouldn't accommodate all nurses who are observing this ruling. And that's why we urge, as I said, authorities to observe and to give this the consideration required. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, I deposit a fixed amount of money every month for my children. An amount has been accumulated now and a year has passed. Should I pay a part of that money as zakah, or should I pay on their behalf from my own money?
Well, it depends. if the children are given this amount, so they own the amount, then this makes them owner of a wealth, and then we need to look at the other conditions of zakah. If the amount reaches the amount of zakah, which is the nisab, known as the nisab, which is the minimum amount to make the wealth payable for zakah, and then the passing of one year, Hijri year, of course, lunar year, then in this case, yes, every single child of them must pay the zakah. But if the father owns the amount saved in particular accounts under their names, but he is the real owner, then in this case he must consider these amounts as part of his own wealth, and the zakah must be payable out of his own wealth, and the conditions are going to be applied accordingly. So the idea here, or the concept, or the ruling here, is that paying the zakah does not need puberty. It needs the applicability of the conditions. So if the conditions are applicable and found, then being a child or an orphan, male or female, doesn't make any change. The amount, the wealth, is payable for zakah, and in this case the person is responsible for paying that amount, which is 2.5%, to the needy and poor individuals in the society. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, there is a prophetic tradition about women shaping their eyebrows being cursed. Is this applicable to men as well, who shave some of the hair between their eyebrows?
The answer is yes, it is also applicable. Why is the tradition is mentioning female? Because it is mostly done by females. Otherwise, the eyebrows attached to the main eyebrows exactly have the same ruling. Even between the eyebrows, if this hair is attached, it is part of the eyebrows, then it has the same ruling, which is the prohibition of shaving it by any means. And it is, as I said, applicable for both males and females. We need here to realize a fact that some wrongdoings are associated with sometimes with males, sometimes with females. This is just because of they are being more attached to that particular wrongdoing. Otherwise, this doesn't mean that the ruling is only limited to that particular gender. All Islamic teachings, unless there is a clear evidence that it is only special for males or females, they are applicable and meant to be for both, for males and females. But as I said, the mentioning of males or females in the evidence itself, talking about even verses from the Holy Quran, or talking about prophetic traditions, it is just because that particular wrongdoing is done by either males or females. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Inna lillah, inna lillah, inna ilayhi raji'un. 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 Inna lillah, inna لله إنا لله إنا إليه راجعون 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 إنا لله إنا إليه راجعون.
If you have any questions for the show, send your email at k.r@oman-radio.gov.om at k.r@oman-radio.gov.om, knowing your religion, or send SMS to 90406. Don't forget to indicate k.r before sending your questions. And for your comments and suggestions, check out our Facebook, Knowing Your Religion.
The next question says, what is the meaning of one of the verses in the Quran that Almighty Allah has instructed believers to lower their gaze? Does this mean when men speak to strange women, they should look in a different direction and they should never have eye contact?
Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, قل للمؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لهم إن الله خبير بما يصنعون. Say to the believers that they cast down their eyes and guard their private parts. That is purer for them. God is aware of the things they work. And the following verse, Allah the Almighty instructed women. He says, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ. And say to the believing women that they cast down their eyes and guard their private parts. So that the same instruction is given to males, to Muslim men, and to Muslim women. If we look at the original text of the Quran, then we find that Allah is saying, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. So say to the believers that they should cast down their eyes, or from their eyes, which means that yes, they are highly recommended to cast down and not to concentrate and focus on while they are approaching women. But it means at the same time, when the verse says min absarim, it means as much as possible. We all know that whether the face of women in Islam must be veiled or not is an issue of dispute between Muslim scholars. We adapt that the face is not part of the private parts of women that they must cover, but it is highly recommended, particularly for beautiful women, to cover to veil their faces. It is not a must unless the sphere around, the environment is unhealthy. And this means that there is a degree of temptation in that particular environment, in that particular sphere. Then in this case it is a must. But the original ruling that covering or veiling the face is not a must. And this means that if it is not a must to cover, to veil the face, this means that it is not one of the private parts that must be covered and must not be looked at. The permissibility of looking at the face is there accordingly, and this is strengthened by many prophetic traditions, one of which when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was riding a donkey, and his cousin Al-Fadl ibn Abbas was behind him, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ met a woman, and when she approached Prophet Muhammad, she was asking him, and Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, his cousin, the cousin of Prophet Muhammad, was looking at the woman, and he was staring deeply at the woman. And when Prophet Muhammad noticed that, he avoided the face of his cousin Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, indicating that he shouldn't stare at the woman. If it is to be forbidden, then of course Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not find it sufficient only to point out to Al-Fadl to stop staring at the woman. And we have a lot of occasions in which women approach Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of the companions. He was sitting with the companions, and we have many occasions in which women approached Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he stared at the woman, of course politely, at the face, and the companions did the same, and they did recognize even women from, of course, their appearance. This happened, as I said, in many occasions. But who can claim that our contemporary time is free of the temptation and fitna, and unfortunately bad intentions, with all what we are witnessing around us of the elements of temptation? So we should be very careful about this instruction. It is to elevate high the values and morals of the society, and we should abide by such instructions. And we should always remember, some people tend to compare also their own situations with the situation of the companions. And I think this is part of the whisper of Satan. Otherwise, how far are we from the righteousness and piety of the companions who witnessed and lived with the Prophet, peace be upon him, and who are very careful and very conscious about their intentions, their feelings, let alone if we are talking about doings and deeds. I think the comparison here is unfair. Yes, we should be ambitious, particularly if we are talking about racing on the path of good doings. But when it comes to purifying our own selves, then we should accuse ourselves. We should accuse our own selves, and we shouldn't trust this, our own souls. Otherwise we are going to rely upon an enemy from within, which might lead us astray. So we should be very careful, and that's why upholding such instructions and such recommendations found in the Holy Quran is very important for Muslims, individuals and groups and societies, for them to preserve and to maintain good conducts and values. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. The next question says, I am a medical surgeon. When I perform ablution, then enter the theatre to perform a surgical procedure, I am sometimes exposed to the patient's private parts or the sight of blood and organs. Does this invalidate my ablution?
There are two things here. The first thing is the exposure to the private parts and to blood of strangers. By to blood, touching. Probably it might touch the body, it might touch the clothes. The other thing is the ablution that he or she performed. For the first case, or for about exposing to, here we are talking about surgical operations.
Yes.
Then this is a necessity, of course. So the permissibility is there. But we advise doctors, surgeons, to limit their exposure to the area that they want to operate. And the same advice is given to the staff available in the theater room. But about the violation of ablution, I would imagine that he wouldn't be free, he or she would not be free of what would cause him or her to invalidate their own pollution, particularly if we're talking about blood. But if they can guarantee that the clothes, the uniforms, are going to protect their own uniforms, the internal uniforms that they are going to perform the prayer with, and blood hasn't touched their bodies, then in this case, because what they have done is permissible, then this does not invalidate their pollution. Yes, it is true that they are highly recommended to redo their pollution just in case. Otherwise, it is not a must. But if there is any sort of blood in their bodies or in their clothes, then they should clean this, and after that, if it is in their bodies, then they need to redo their pollution. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Thank you, Sheikh. There is a question from a non-Muslim. He says, will all non-Muslims go to hellfire?
Well, here a very important ruling. We are not asked to judge people. Salvation is not our duty. Salvation is the duty of the Creator, the Lord of the worlds, the Lord of the heaven and the skies, Allah the Almighty alone. He hasn't left this to the people. We are asked to weigh our own doings and deeds. We are asked to exchange advices and to guide people to the right path. But we are not asked to judge other people. Why should we care about other people and what is their destiny? We need to understand that salvation is in the hand of Allah alone. He alone has the right to judge people. He alone has the right to announce who is going to be rewarded in paradise, who is going to be, and who is going to be punished in hellfire. Unfortunately, such a phenomena is spreading. People are forgetting about what they are asked to do. They are forgetting about their own souls, their own selves, and that they should remember Allah the Almighty and be righteous and do good things in this life. And they are trying to ask about others and trying to judge even their salvations. The destiny, the salvation, the life to come belongs to the owner of all, to the owner of the worlds, this life and the hereafter, who is Allah alone. So we should understand this fact, and we shouldn't bother ourselves about others. We should, yes, care about our own selves. We should bother we should give the attention required to remember Allah the Almighty and be aware of our own destiny and our own salvation.
Sheikh, what about Muslims? Will they enter hellfire as well?
It's exactly the same. I mean, being a Muslim does not guarantee paradise. Being good Muslim, of course, if we refer to the, hundreds of verses in the Holy Quran and prophetic tradition, then we are going to find that by grace of Allah the Almighty, those who are righteous, those who associate themselves to taqwa, then they are granted paradise. But we cannot say that so and so unless we are informed, we are given names in the Holy Quran or authentic traditions that are transmitted by hundreds of people. So in this case, yes, we believe that so and so, because the Quran has told us that they are going to be in paradise, the evidence are undoubtful, then in this case, yes, we can say this. And exactly the same, if we are talking about individuals mentioned explicitly in the Holy Quran or in undoubtful traditions transmitted by, as I said, hundreds of transmitters, which is called as hadith mutawatir, then in this case, yes, it is part of our belief. In this life, we are asked to associate this belief. But again, if we are talking about what is going to happen there in the life to come, this is entirely up to Allah the Almighty. We must be very careful we must, as I said, look at our own and examine our own deeds and actions, purify these actions, purify our intentions, ask Allah the Almighty to accept our repentance and grant us paradise in the hereafter. And we should bear responsibility in this life to spread the message of Islam, the message of worshipping Allah the Almighty, and to guide people to the right path. This is our responsibility, but we shouldn't, as I said, place ourselves in a place which belongs to Allah alone. We must be, it is a very serious issue, we must be very careful on this regard. Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Sheikh Kahlan bin Nabhan Al-Kharousi, the Assistant Grand Mufti of the Sultanate of Oman. Sheikhi, thank you very much for your time and your knowledge. And I hope our listeners have benefited from today's
Thank you very much, Brother Hatim.
See you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala.
Dear listeners, I'm your host, Hatim Al-Abdisalam, signing off for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.